What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the C's News. We're continuing to dive deep into Boston's offseason. And honestly, I've got to tell you, today might actually bring us some positive news. Now, I'm not saying it's a full game changer or anything earth-shattering, but it's definitely a glimmer of light at the end of this long, dark tunnel we've been staring down all offseason. For real, it's the kind of news that's starting to give me just a little ounce of happiness about this Boston season. And that's something I haven't felt in a while. So buckle up, because we're going to get into that and a whole lot more today. And of course, as always, we'll wrap things up by diving into some of your comments from yesterday's video. So make sure you stay active in the chat and keep sharing your thoughts, your takes, and your hot takes. That way tomorrow we've got even more stuff to work with and bounce off each other. And if it's your first time here, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and keeps you up to date with all the latest Celtics news and analysis. Alright, let's get going. Now, I don't usually get excited over an NBA tweet, especially when it comes from the Dunk Central account or similar sources, but today something caught my eye. I saw a tweet from Steve B. Hoop, who is a senior NBA columnist over at Heavy on Sports, and I thought, okay, maybe we've got something here. Before I read the tweet, let me just say that I might owe a lot of you an apology. Because from day one, ever since we started this channel, right around the time Jason Tatum got injured, everyone was buzzing in the chat about how Tatum got the surgery early, how he's built differently, how those broad shoulders mean he's thin, going to come back stronger and faster than expected. Everyone was optimistic, hyped up, and full of hope. But I was the voice of reason, or at least I thought so, telling everyone to relax, that it's a long road, that rushing Tatum back could be a huge mistake. I kept saying, let's just let him get healthy. Don't worry about rushing it. His health is priority number one. So here we are, back to the tweet. Steve B. Hoop said, scouts say Tatum's been moving really well at Chris Paul's camp, the CP3 camp. And here's the full quote. I'm no doctor, but I've seen guys come back from Achilles tears, and he looks way ahead of schedule. I was kind of shocked to see how well he was moving. I have no idea what that means for his return timetable. But the Celtics medical team surely has a plan to make sure he's where he needs to be when he does come back. Right now, he looks great. Of course, he's not doing any running or jogging yet, but he's in great shape and was handling his part at the camp without trouble. Now, this is huge. If you think about it, the Celtics coach Brad Stevens went out of his way in the offseason to say two things about Tatum. First, he has not ruled Tatum out for the entire season, meaning the door is still open for a return. That's huge, because you might remember that Rick Carlisle, the Pacers coach, already said that Tyrese Halliburton is going to miss the entire season. So the Celtics being more optimistic here stands out. Brad also said there's no timetable for Tatum's return, which is a smart way to keep expectations realistic while staying hopeful. But everything is pointing in a positive direction, and it's making me believe that there's a genuine chance, even if it's just a sliver of hope, that Tatum could make it back on the court this season. Of course, a lot of other things would have to go right for that to happen. If by the All-Star break Jaylen Brown picks up an injury or misses some time, or if Derek White struggles or misses games and the Celtics find themselves about 8 games under .500, just throwing hypotheticals out there, I don't think rushing Tatum back makes sense. You wouldn't want to push him back just to come back for a last month of the season only to be a 9th seed playing in the play-in tournament. No, if that's the case, it's better to stay patient and focus on health. However, if everything goes well, the stars align, and Jaylen Brown goes into MVP mode, and Peyton Pritchard is knocking down threes at a ridiculous 45% clip on good volume, and Derek White turns into an all-star for the first time in his career, and the Celtics find themselves sitting comfortably as a top 4 seed by March 1st, feeling momentum building, then suddenly out of that tunnel comes Jason Tatum. Can you imagine that energy, the excitement? That would be like injecting pure adrenaline straight into my veins. That scenario would be incredible. I'm starting to get myself hyped, honestly. I'm talking myself into this, which is crazy. Because earlier I was all about patience and caution. But now I'm thinking about how insane it would be to have Tatum back just in time to push the Celtics deep into the playoffs. Of course, if that does happen, I'm begging the front office to please, for the love of God, go get a new center. This team will need a true rim protector and an anchor down low if they want to make a serious run. So many times we've seen that if the Celtics want to attack the Eastern Conference, and with the Knicks having extended mid-call bridges, and you can see the Knicks aren't maxing out their guys so they can maintain flexibility, that's smart. Team building. They're setting themselves up to keep getting better while managing cap space effectively. And that's something the Celtics have to watch closely. So if Tatum really is coming back and this squad is ready to attack the East, the Celtics better go out and get a center. It's that simple. But look, let's keep expectations realistic. We don't want to rush him back. When our king is ready to return, I will be ready to give him the crown. I'm ready to welcome him back with open arms when the time is right. Switching gears a little bit, there was an Eastern Conference top 10 players list that dropped yesterday on NBA.com. Keep in mind this list includes injuries, which is why Tatum isn't on it, and neither is Halliburton. Other injured players might be missing too, but here's how the list looks. At number 1, unsurprisingly, is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Nobody's going to complain about that pick. Number 2 is Jalen Brunson, which is an interesting take. I wasn't expecting him that high, but okay. At number 3, Donovan Mitchell from the Cavaliers. Again, that's pretty solid. Now, this is where things get spicy and where I want to hear what you think. Number 4 is Paolo Banchero. They got him ahead of players like Joel Embiid, which feels a bit aggressive given what we've seen from him. Maybe the NBA analysts are projecting an MVP level jump, but it still feels bold to me. Number 5 is Cade Cunningham, which makes sense given his trajectory and recent performances. Joel Embiid comes in at number 6, which is interesting because if Embiid plays a full healthy season, many would put him second. But with his injury history, maybe they're being cautious. Evan Mobley ranks 7th, and that's understandable due to his defensive presence and improving offensive game. Then our guy Jaylen Brown is at 8. After him, Karl Anthony Towns is 9, and Trae Young rounds out the top 10. I know this might feel like splitting hairs between players 4 through 10, but I want to ask you, do you think Jaylen Brown belongs ahead of some of these guys? And if Tatum is out for the season, that's the only reason he's not on the list, right? I would actually put Jaylen Brown ahead of Embiid right now, simply because I don't know how many games Embiid is going to play or how effective he will be when he does. It's tough to build a team around a superstar who's dominant when healthy, but only healthy a fraction of the time. So it's a tough spot for the Sixers front office. Do they build to win now or start thinking about the future? Anyway, that's where I land on that ranking. I think Jaylen Brown is going to have a big season, but I'm curious, how do you feel about that? Would you take Jaylen Brown over some of those players? Let me know in the chat. Now, moving on, let's talk about some stats to give context. Paolo Banchero played 46 games last year, averaging 26.7 rebounds and 5 assists. Cade Cunningham played closer to 70 games and averaged 26.9 assists and 6 rebounds. Evan Mobley, a beast defensively, averaged 18 points, 10 rebounds, plus blocks and steals. So the numbers do paint a pretty compelling picture. Maybe that list isn't that far off after all. Let's shift gears again and get into the Ben Simmons saga. All signs were pointing toward Ben Simmons signing with the Celtics any day now. I was honestly surprised it hadn't happened yet, but then out of nowhere a report came out last night that the New York Knicks are strongly interested in Ben Simmons. And now I'm wondering if this might be the most we ever talk about Ben Simmons for the rest of his career, because it feels like he's sucking up a lot of airtime and conversation. I think it's because we're in the slow part of the NBA calendar, and there's just not a lot of flexibility left with available players. But honestly, I don't see Simmons ever becoming a major impact player on a team that matters. Now, if teams like Sacramento or Chicago are interested, I don't pay much attention. But the Knicks being involved makes me think that front offices are eyeballing how little it might cost to bring Simmons in. Likely a minimum contract. It is like, okay, if we get something positive out of him, great. If not, we cut him loose. But I think Gary Payton II is a much better fit on any team in the league than Ben Simmons right now. Payton brings defense toughness and a positive locker. Room vibe. Simmons, on the other hand, has baggage and a spotty injury history. Plus, we all saw what happened in Brooklyn. So I'm leaning toward believing that the Celtics, or any team wanting to get better, would prioritize Payton II over Simmons, even if Simmons comes cheap. What do you think? Would you rather have Peyton, 10, or Simmons? Drop your thoughts below. Finally, before I wrap up, let's talk about Jaylen Brown's scoring and clutch ability. Too many times people underestimate his killer instinct and scoring prowess. He's shown he can take over games, especially in crunch time, and hit 25 plus points consistently. If the Celtics want to be a top-tier team in the East, Jaylen's scoring and leadership are absolutely key. Without him playing at that level, it's tough for the Celtics to compete with the top teams like Milwaukee, Miami, or even the Knicks. All in all, I'm cautiously optimistic. We still have a long off-season ahead. Plenty of moves to be made and some serious hoops to watch. But these small sparks of good news, like Tatum's rehab progressing ahead of schedule, make me feel like this team could surprise a lot of people this year. Alright, now that we've laid the groundwork with the news about Tatum's rehab and the Eastern Conference top players list, let's dive even deeper into what this offseason means for the Celtics and what the landscape of the East looks like as we head toward the 2025 season. There's a lot to unpack, and honestly, it's one of those moments where you have to balance optimism with realism, because the Celtics' future could swing in so many directions depending on a few key variables that are still totally up in the air. Let's start with the bench and role players, because sometimes those pieces are what make or break a team in the playoffs. The Celtics, for all their star power, need consistent production beyond Tatum and Brown. Derek White has been a solid contributor, but there's always room for him to elevate his game, especially in crunch time. Last season, Derek showed flashes of brilliance, game-winning shots, lockdown defense, but consistency was sometimes missing. If he can become more reliable on both ends of the floor, that would take some pressure off the big guys. And then there's Peyton Pritchard, who quietly had a strong season shooting the three and facilitating the offense. His improvement is critical because the Celtics can't rely solely on their stars. They need those role players to step up. But here's the thing, the Celtics front office needs to look at a big picture and figure out how to fill those gaps, while also addressing their biggest weakness, rim protection and rebounding. Al Horford is getting older, and while his leadership and basketball IQ are unmatched, he's not the defensive force he used to be. Robert Williams III has potential, but his injury history and inconsistency make it hard to bank on him as the true defensive anchor. That means Boston has to find a center or big man who can protect the paint block shots and clean the glass. Someone who can contest shots, intimidate opponents, and give Tatum and Brown the freedom to play aggressively on the perimeter. There are rumors floating around about possible trade targets and free agents, but nothing concrete yet. The Celtics have the assets and cap space, but the market is competitive. Teams know Boston's urgency, and they might drive prices up. Plus, the Celtics have to be cautious not to mortgage the future for a short-term fix, especially there. Hoping Tatum will return healthy and dominant. Finding the right balance between a veteran presence and youth development is tricky, and Brad Stevens' front office has shown they prefer smart, calculated moves rather than flashy trades. Speaking of Brad Stevens, I think his coaching style will be crucial this season. He's one of the best in the league at developing talent and adjusting on the fly. The Celtics' success depends heavily on how well he manages rotations, handles minutes for players coming back from injury, and integrates new pieces into the system. If he can unlock Derek White's full potential, maximize Peyton Pritchard's shooting, and ensure Jaylen Brown keeps his scoring and defensive intensity, Boston could be a dangerous team even without Tatum for the first half of the season. Another interesting aspect to consider is the Eastern Conference itself. The East has been historically viewed as weaker than the West, but lately that narrative is shifting. Teams like Milwaukee with Giannis and Drew Holiday, Miami with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and the improving New York Knicks led by Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson are all tough competitors. Not to mention the rising stars like Paolo Banchero and the Cavaliers trying to find their identity with Donovan Mitchell. The battle for playoff positioning is going to be intense, and every win matters. The Celtics can't afford to take any game lightly, especially early on before Tatum's expected return. Now, I want to talk about the psychological and emotional side of the game, which often gets overlooked. Tatum's injury isn't just physical, it's a mental hurdle for the whole team. When your best player goes down with an Achilles tear, it shakes the confidence of the squad. But seeing Tatum making progress, working out at CP3's camp, moving well, it's a huge morale booster. Players feed off each other's energy. If Brown, White, and Pritchard see that Tatum is coming back stronger, that can fuel a winning mentality. It's about belief, trust, and resilience. The Celtics have been tested in the past, and their core has proven they can rise to the occasion, but it takes a certain mental toughness to push through adversity. That's what makes this offseason's development so important. Switching gears a little, let's talk about the draft and how the Celtics might approach it. The team isn't expected to have a lottery pick, but if they do, it's going to be critical. The draft is an opportunity to add young talent who can contribute right away or develop into key players down the line. The Celtics have done well historically with drafting and developing talent, but the draft class this year is interesting. There's a mix of high upside wings guards and some big men who could fit the Celtics style. Depending on their position, I expect Boston to prioritize players who can shoot, defend multiple positions, and have high basketball IQ. They don't need another project. They need guys who can step in and make an impact quickly, especially if Tatum's timeline gets pushed back. One name that's been mentioned is a sharpshooting wing who can space the floor and create secondary scoring opportunities. The Celtics need more shooting around Brown and Tatum, and spacing is key to running effective pick and rolls. With teams doubling Brown and Tatum having reliable shooters is non-negotiable. Also on defense, the new guys need to buy into the team's culture and work ethic. That's always been a hallmark of Boston teams, and it's what keeps them competitive year after year. Now I want to circle back to the Ben Simmons situation because it's the elephant in the room. The Celtics have been linked to Simmons since the trade deadline last year, but nothing materialized. Now, with the Knicks reportedly interested, it throws a wrench into the Celtics' plans. Simmons is a complicated player. His talent is undeniable. He's a former All-Star with elite defensive skills and playmaking ability. But his confidence issues, shooting woes, and mental health struggles have made him unpredictable. If the Celtics want to take a chance, it has to be with the right support system. Brad Stevens and the Boston staff would have to manage him carefully, ensuring he fits into their culture and scheme. That said, I'm skeptical. Simmons might be a risk too big to take, especially given the depth Boston needs in other areas. Gary. Payton II might not be as flashy, but he's a proven winner and a defensive pest. I feel like the Celtics should prioritize building a balanced roster with guys who are committed and dependable. A player like Simmons with all his talent but questions around his consistency could be a distraction. It's a tough call, but I lean towards stability and chemistry over a high-risk, high-reward gamble. Moving on, let's discuss the salary cap situation and what it means for Boston's flexibility this season and beyond. The NBA salary cap is always a tricky beast to navigate, especially for teams with multiple stars. The Celtics have done a good job managing their cap so far, but adding another major contract, whether for a free agent or a trade, could tie their hands. They have to think not only about this season, but about the next 3 to 5 years. Are they building a contender now, or are they planning for sustained success? Sometimes those strategies clash. For example, if they decide to bring in a veteran center on a big deal, that could limit their ability to sign complementary shooters or role players next summer. Conversely, if they keep their cap flexible, they might risk not having enough immediate firepower to compete at the highest level this year. It's a balancing act, and the Celtics front office deserves credit for trying to thread that needle. They have to weigh their options carefully and be ready to pivot if opportunities arise. And speaking of opportunities, let's not forget the international market. Over the past few years, the NBA has seen a surge in talent coming from overseas. Players from Europe, Australia, and other regions have made significant impacts in the league. The Celtics might look there for a diamond in the rough, someone who can contribute immediately or develop behind the scenes. These players often come with lower price tags and high upside. It's a smart way to add depth and talent without breaking the bank. Also, I want to highlight the importance of health and conditioning. After Tatum's Achilles injury, the Celtics are likely putting a renewed focus on strength and conditioning programs to keep players healthy throughout the grueling NBA schedule. Injuries have derailed many promising seasons, and the Celtics can't afford that.